kick us off.
Cool.
It's a recorded meeting.
All right. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It gave me, this is a talk where it's one of the few times where I get to sort of share an experience as it's happening, sort of in progress. So it's, you know, they always say like story should start in media res, like you kind of come in and it makes it more interesting. So for me, the Create ML app was something that I found interesting and wanted to try, but I really didn't have a case that was compelling enough to use it initially. But earlier this year, I started working. I guess I probably should get this to, here we go. I forgot to introduce, I'm Alondo Brewington, I'm an iOS developer. Those are the two handles. Joseph's already mentioned like the Twitter handles. But I was, just to kind of, as a background, this year, of course, everybody knows, has been a little turbulent in terms of how we work and where we work. And this was in the nicer days. I was in Costa Rica. From the photo was free access to all the bananas and fruits and all that good stuff. Since then, of course, things are a lot different in terms of work and travel. And I was doing a client project starting at the beginning of this year. And it was supposed to be an analysis app for tennis players with a company based out of the UK. And what we were going to be able to do is upload and analyze people's serves in terms of speed and accuracy to help them improve. Well, with the shutdown globally, what happened was people weren't able to try the app. They weren't able to test it. So we sort of had to pivot at the last minute. And so what we ended up doing was changing to create an app that leveraged the vision framework and to use an existing machine learning model for detecting poses so that we could create a fun game called the Reflexes App for people to play. And so that was my first introduction to machine learning in any form. During the follow up, during the summer, during WWDC, there were a few new presentations on machine learning, and there was a presentation on creating your own models on your devices with the machine learning app, Create ML. And so I got really excited because I had another idea that I wanted to sort of merge the fun aspects of that Reflexes app that I was working on with one of my favorite hobbies. And so I decided that that was the direction I would go in. And so here, we wanted to talk about my experience so far with using the Create ML app, the requirements, the types of models you can create, and then just share my experience right now for an app that I'm working on in collecting the training data, training the model, and testing the model, and then what's coming next. So just a brief overview, the Create ML app is used to create and train machine learning models on your Mac. It's commonly used for recognizing images. I'm pretty sure if you haven't seen, you can easily find some videos where people are trying to detect dogs or cats or bananas. Other things that you can do is extracting meaning from text. And quite frankly, for me, when I was watching these talks, they were really cool, they were neat, but they didn't really do anything for me. I didn't feel a connection with wanting to try the app to want to do anything with it. But when I started working on the Reflexes app and we pivoted, I tried a few different models for body pose detection and to varying degrees of success. And then we settled on one that Apple made available that ended up being the one that we used and shipped in the app. So I wanted to understand like what it would take to test a model after training and integrate it into the, integrate it using Core ML. So, here we go. So here's the Reflexes app. We shipped it, I think earlier this summer. And so basically I'm detecting left and right hand and displaying targets on the screen. This was the first game that we developed. There are a couple of new ones now that have come out since that are a little more complex, a little more complicated. But this was my first experience using Core ML. We use the PoseNet model, which Apple has available if you go to the machine learning section of the developer site. And the two frameworks that we're using here are Core ML and the Vision framework. So I saw this and said, oh, this will be interesting. But that model was already made. And there was a lot of work with some of the back-end engineers that were working on creating a model for the tennis app. And it just seemed like a lot of work. And honestly, it seemed like something that I would be interested in doing, but I didn't feel like I had the bandwidth to do. Before I get into that, there are the types of models that you can build with the Create ML application, or you can build models for images, text, sound, motion. There's tabular information that you can build models against, and then there's video. Video was the one I was interested in, specifically using the ML action classifier, and that's when I got excited during WDC. There was a presentation that showed you how to build your own action classifier. And it got me excited because one of my favorite things is martial arts and boxing. So I said, well, what if I could start training a model to analyze the proper punches? And any boxers that are watching this, I know, you don't have to tell me. I'm working on getting better. My form is a little off. But I wanted to be able to analyze it and sort of gamify the experience for training, partially because at this point, when this video was taken, I was still in Medellin, Colombia. We were in full quarantine, and so really isolated. So I couldn't train with anybody else. I wasn't able to engage with other people. And I said, well, if I built an app that would allow me to work on different movements, different punch combinations, and things like that, that would be a lot of fun. It would be a great use case for me to use Create ML. So I started searching the web for video data to proper form for punches, professional fighters and trainers. And then I was recording myself for the data to analyze it against. And the goal is, of course, to eventually create more complex combinations and movements that I was seeing in the demonstration videos during the WW. So my first worry was that I could not do this on my machine. I'm using a mid-2015 MacBook Pro. The fans are going right now, even as I'm talking. So I said, oh, and in the availability of newer machines, the latest and greatest is just not that. It's not that great when you're not near a city that has an Apple store. You're kind of dependent on secondhand shops and things like that. So I did end up finding that I was able to do it if I upgraded to Big Sur, which I did. My fear was that it would be incredibly slow. I was pleasantly surprised that in building my first attempts at building the model, that it really wasn't. That, like, with the initial bit of data that I loaded it with, I was able to build a model, simple model as it is, in just about 7 minutes. So it's really accessible tool, and it wasn't nearly as intimidating as I thought. But so one of the suggestions that they have in terms of building and testing the model, I recorded, I used about 50 videos to get started. So it said 50 samples. And I started with just sort of like a binary approach. I recorded one movement, which is the basic jab, and then a lot of other movements that I would categorize as none. They suggest that you do an other category as well, so that you have sort of 3 buckets. You're using the movements that you want to classify, video when nothing's being done, so it can identify none, and then other, so you can identify other things that may be going on that aren't not necessarily classified. So in this image here, this is a photo of me processing some video, and I'm going to do a demo of that here. If my laptop will actually switch over. Interesting. Let's go. Is my screen still visible?
Yep, we're seeing the, I think the keynote.
Okay, cool. So this is the Create ML application here. And so you can come in, and I just created a new project. And my project was the action classifier. So I wanted a new action classification here. So it's pretty straightforward to get started. So here's my model. I wanted to detect different types of punches. So I created a model source, and I have 50 items that I loaded. So I had 2 folders that I created, some of a lot of videos of me throwing jabs, some of other people throwing jabs, Some of these videos actually have multiple people in them. So in some of the videos, it's not just one person, like an instructor on a YouTube channel. It's a trainer and a fighter. The trainer's talking. So I was wondering like how well it would differentiate with multiple people in the video and isolate to classify the punches. I did a lot of clipping though. So I did a lot of sort of clipping videos to make sure it just focused on a single fighter, and then got in and started the training. And these were the results of the training. I'm still learning, and this is, you know, the accuracy it tells me. Of course, I'm just accepting it. I don't have anything to compare it against just yet. So I got really excited. So 99.7 training accuracy. This is great with the data that I provided. And there's my two classes. So there's 100% precision for the classes and 99% for none. And at this point, I felt like this was a good starting point to get familiar with the tools, to start using it. And then I started to preview. So I had recorded some of this training data. This is just me doing my regular morning or afternoon workout. And I've got a few different movies recording to test to see how well it was evaluating that particular single movement that I had it doing. Now, the thing about the jab that I learned now, and one of the biggest takeaways is that it's a combination. I was very focused on the throwing of the lead hand and just making sure that all of the videos captured that extension. But most of the time in boxing, when you're taught to throw the jab or you're throwing the jab when you're sparring or fighting, you're usually stepping into the jab as well. So a little quirk that I discovered came out of this that I wanted to share was that these percentages and confidence were really off. Like I was expecting us to do initially a better job of isolating that forward movement. So this one is just forward and backwards movement, which is just a component of training, learning how to step in. You just step in and then step back. But if you notice, I'm not throwing any punches. My hands aren't moving. And yet it's saying it's detecting a jab with 95% confidence, which is the first thing to let me know that I need to do some retraining. To give you another example of another exercise or another movement that would qualify as none, and this one's classified as everybody's favorite exercise, the burpee. So I recorded myself doing the burpee. And this one, of course, it did a really good job of noticing that, of course, this is nowhere near a jab, but this movement, my body position is different. I'm not facing, I'm not profiled to the camera. The one that really surprised me, that threw me off, and I think this is the next, for me, the next lesson, the next step, is this is called a parry. It's a defensive move in boxing where you're just slightly just knocking your opponent's hand down. And this was my first clue that maybe what I was doing needs to be separated even more, and there needs to be more test data, because I'm moving my arms, but I'm not fully extending, and the model's not necessarily picking up on that fact. I do like the fact that it, just as an aside, that this blended view between the wireframe, this wireframe is really, really neat. If you use the body pose model that already exists, you can overlay in your video analysis the wireframe as well for testing. And it really helped us for the game as well. But it was surprising to see that this was not classifying the way that I thought that it would with the initial movements. And then finally, the video of me throwing knees, which is not boxing, this is from Muay Thai, which I also train, was also being classified the same way. So, but I think the fact that the hands are raised and there's a little bit of forward movement is what is throwing this off. So the takeaway for me is that it's really easy to use. This is sort of like the initial pass, loading a bunch of videos. In fact, the thing that was the most time consuming was just collecting and editing all the video. I mean, that was, like, quite frankly, the biggest thing. So that was nice. So my takeaway for using the tool so far is that I really do like it. It makes it easy to build a model. I think this is going to work out for where I'm going with the app, but there absolutely positively has to be much more testing. And this is in the lessons learned. I think it's seeing the minor movements as jab. So I need more differentiating movements here, more folders, not just other, but additional movements, and more than 50 samples as well. So even though they recommend 50 samples to use to get started, I think I'm probably going to go to maybe 250, it's provided I can find enough video or get enough volunteers or people who are willing to record themselves performing jams to see how that goes. So those are for me what's next in terms of the project that I'm building is additional training for the models to differentiate. I'm adding additional punches, the cross, the hook, uppercuts, things like that, and then defensive movements, because I think that's also important. I'm trying to gamify this thing, but I really am excited about what I'm able to do and how quickly I was able to do it with CreateML. I was thinking of how I could modify the existing body pose, but it doesn't quite classify the actions, and I would have to do some other types of calculations to try to determine, like, analyze the wireframe in the particular body positions to determine when someone was throwing a particular punch and put those together. But I think the pathway here is despite the initial work that's going to be needed to get the model just right, that I'll get better results. Just sharing some resources here from the developer site, integrating the core model into your app. I highly recommend they explore the Action and Vision app and the Build Action Classifier video. They never put the sample data out, the sample project out that they use though. They have this fitness trainer app. I don't know, Apple's bad about that. They'll show you a demo, and then they'll say, oh, in the presentation, it'll be available, and then it's still not available. So, but that is just my initial foray into CreateML. As I said, I'm excited about using it further and seeing where I can take it.
Sweet. Where can you currently get the CreateML app? Is it just from the developers.apple website, or is it like available on the App Store as well?
I got it from the developer.apple website, and it may now be available. I didn't check after I got it because I had to go do the whole Big Sur update, which meant I had to do some other things on my laptop. So I kind of went down that rabbit hole for like a day and a half. But I haven't looked back since. I kind of like, oh, all right, I got it installed. But definitely on the developer Apple site, you can go get it. And like I said, it's not, and the models aren't that large either. I mean, this model, of course, is only 50, but even the PoseNet model that we use in the Reflexes app is only, I think, it's less than 10 megs. So even for body pose detection, it's pretty small. So putting it in the app is not going to cause a serious impact in terms of size.
And how many videos do you say you currently have? I know you say you're trying to work your way up to 250.
Yeah. So I have 50. I had some more that I didn't clip because I was wanting to test with additional videos of other people. So I have about 80 total, but I have 30 more that I need to just edit down and pair and use. And then using the app in its existing form, adding some video to capture for users who want to volunteer to supply their workout data as well to continue to make it better.
Maybe you can just post something on Twitter, and we can get a bunch of DCiOS attendees to post some videos. That's
a good idea, actually. I hadn't thought about it, just because the app wasn't in a state that I was less than embarrassed about putting out, because the initial version is just the workout itself. So like I have these workouts that you can do, just kind of train indoors by yourself. And then this video portion, the analysis portion was the latter portion, but it's a great idea. I need to start doing more out loud and visible.
Yeah, and we all have so much time waiting for Exo to compile.
Yeah.
I'm not on Big Sur yet.
It's a good way to get a little frustration out.
That's right, yeah. I'm not on Big Sur yet. I am on my personal computer, but on my work one. But I am seeing things working a lot faster on my personal one. My personal laptop, I think we're in the same boat. We both have the 2015 models.
Yeah, I was actually excited since I was here for a few weeks. I was going to order the new M1 in the 13, but to get 16 gig, it's not available in store, and it's past my date to it will gone.
I was tempted to buy it, but I've been holding off, luckily.
Oh, and just one thing to note too is I only had to upgrade to use CreateML because you have to have that later version to use the action classifier. If you're using some of the older stuff like image classification or tabular, I don't think you need to do that. I think you can use the older version and you can still use Sierra.
Cool. I mean, if anyone else has any questions, you can either put one of the yes check mark, and we can unmute you and to ask a question, or as always, you can always just post it in the the question down there. There we go. So we have a Create ML is available in Xcode 11 in developer tools. Oh, cool. I didn't know that. Did anyone else have any questions? And you said you're off to Mexico soon, right?
Yeah, I'm headed tomorrow morning to Playa del Carmen, which I'm not, considering some of the latest news, I don't know if this is such a smart idea, but there's a huge, there was a huge Burning Man type event down in Tulum, which is just south of Playa del Carmen, and a bunch of people got COVID. So yeah, so I think I'm just gonna sequester myself in my apartment and mix with people.
Here we have one question that came out is, what is this good and not good for?
So I think for the purposes, my specific purposes were to try to use the action classifier for any kind of like identifying a series of movements to classify those. Now, for the traditional uses with the tabular information or with identifying images, I think there's been a lot of demos and there's tons of things out there, I think, that you can see about whether something's a dog or a cat, determining a type of flower or tree. I think there are plenty of examples of that already exist. For me, the real attractive thing about this was this new action classifier and being able to identify movements. I do have an idea around tabular if someone wants to just go ahead and do this, because I may not have time. Load Hall of Fame data for a particular sport, hockey, football, basketball, and then analyze the existing Hall of Famers and then run current players against that. There's a barbershop conversation that happens all the time is whether X player deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, but like building models of existing players and that criteria kind of takes some of that, the passionate part about it's like my guy should be there, you know, instead of like, oh, it's just based on this analysis. No, they're not a Hall of Famer. Sorry.
That would be a good idea. Our last speaker, Craig Clayton, I'm not sure if you know him or not, but he works very closely with, I want to say it was like NFL or some sports channel where he's creating a lot of these different, like he would have access to those videos. So I wonder if that's something he would be able to take on. I know he just finished his book, so he should have a little more time on his hands.
Another idea I think you could do if you're analyzing text is if you were to do like grade level assessments for, there's part of using Create ML, you create models around language and text. I know some people use it for like translations and things like that, but you could also do like maybe grade level assessments or reading and writing level assessments determined based on like the vocabulary used in sentence structure. There's just another idea I'm throwing out. These are just ideas that came to me that I'm absolutely not going to build. For AR or VR, so my goal is to use it for AR. So because we're using the PoseNet model, and the PoseNet model is using AR. So we're putting you in the we're using the existing space, and we're throwing in the initial version, we're throwing 2D targets at the player, and you have to tap them. But those will be changing over time because some of the games that are in development are throwing 3-dimensional objects in the AR space that you either have to avoid or touch. And so building the models for better detection, we were working towards building a better hand model detection because we had a game designed specifically for footballers and volleyball players for sort of touch drills with a virtual volleyball for hand position. So AR is definitely a good use for that.
I'm curious if they use this on that show Silicon Valley when they had it. Did you get a chance to see that show?
I've seen there was an episode where they tried to decide wasn't a joke about the hot dog or something like that?
Yeah, they created a machine learning app, hot dog, not hot dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely. I mean, I think that is a good start. I think you can probably find more sample code to use there. I was kind of going a little bit further, and I've seen some flower classifications that are pretty neat, which I actually would find handy now because now I'm seeing different types of plants and flowers I don't recognize, And so it'd be nice to be able to just say, okay, taking some pictures and do some analysis there.
Yeah, that is really cool. And I've also seen some groups online that are kind of doing the same thing with different mushrooms, that they go out into the forest and grab them. So that would be a cool app to determine, whether or not this mushroom is something that's edible.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yes. So for the play around with different model types, in terms of creating different model types, no. The reason why I wanted to talk about this one was just because I had a very specific goal, and sometimes like a presentation will like sort of cover the different model types. I played with different body detection models in the building of the Reflexes app, but haven't played with the different model types here in terms of creating. Like I said, if I had time, I would definitely do tabular data just for my basketball Hall of Fame discussion debates, and then I am learning. Even though I live in Spanish-speaking countries, I still take Spanish, and so I've had some ideas about using it to build a vocabulary list and testing that way. But I just haven't had the time to dive into those and play with those just yet. Sure.
How long would you say it took you to kind of pick this all up and understand it as much as you do now overall?
I think I was helped by the fact that I was introduced to it via the existing client project, and that helped me sort of map a lot of the concepts over fairly easily, because having already had access to the model, investigating a bunch of different body pose models, and even the code, which was kind of nice to see that when I looked at some of their sample code that they did have available via screen share and the samples, that I wasn't off the mark with what I was doing. So I would say that most of my experience though was gained by going the other way. I was using some of their documentation prior to DubDub, because we started this in February or March. I think March is when the shutdown happened. And so by June, I'd already built in test flight a version that we were testing around. So if you were starting from scratch, I would say maybe a few weeks, like depending on like how new you are to this entire area, but not terribly long. Like I didn't find anything to be like unapproachable for anybody. So a couple of weeks of playing around with it, I think you could probably get something up and feel pretty comfortable with it.
And were the resources that you mostly use just from like Apple's developer site, or did you use anything like Ray Wenderlich or anything out there that helped you out?
Sometimes I do check out Ray Wenderlich's site, but I didn't use it for this. A lot of like Stack Overflow questions for different frameworks. If I had a question about CoreML or using the Vision framework, but this one was mostly, in fact, it was kind of contrary to what normally happens. Apple really kind of saved us in the pinch in this one, because I was trying to make another model work that was a bit larger, and it just happened that day. We were having a meeting and someone mentions like, hey, I think Apple just dropped a new body pose model. And so I went and grabbed it. It's like, oh, this is smaller and it works just fine. It was exactly what we needed. I think the biggest challenge for me in this one is that because I decided to do this project at the end of the year, all Swift UI, that for the game mode and the game screen, I had to drop down into UI Kit again. And so we're using view controller, UI hosting controllers with a view controller to use it.
Sweet. And this is not a client project, right? This is a project that you kind of kicked off on your own.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like it kind of forked off of so it's my passion project. I have an app I'm writing called Shadow Hit, which is just a training app for shadow boxing. You can do different kinds of shadow boxing workouts, but I wanted to add a little more gamification, and I wanted to add an element to really bring people into focus. Ironically enough, I don't know if anybody's seen these commercials for Fight Camp, which are popping up all over my timeline right now. I'm seeing them everywhere. Which is basically you get this heavy bag in your house and you wear these gloves with these sensors in them, and you punch and you follow along the workout. And so it was interesting that I was seeing that now. My approach, of course, is not going to require any equipment. I'm totally trying to use the model to detect the punches and the type of punches, so you can get your punch counts and everything like that. So the question is, on-device training is still not available on iOS. That is a good question. I'm not sure. I thought that it was, but maybe it's not. I've just been building the model. For me, this step of like not having to have a server or something like that, or just being able to use this app to build a model was such a big gain, because before I was either depending on something I'd find, or we'd have to get our back-end engineer to build, which he was already building a model for a different sport. And so there's just a turnaround time, even having to build a model on the Mac. And just, I'm still using video though. I'm still capturing video and then moving it over to do that. So not sure about the current state of on-device training.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Alondo, yeah, thanks so much for coming on and doing our December talk. We're hoping to have you back again come 2021.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know you're definitely going to be traveling, or you say you're traveling just to Mexico and staying there indefinitely for now.
No, well, I mean, so my plans are, there are a couple of places in Mexico I wanted to visit and revisit. I'm still trying to knock out the 7 modern wonders. So Chichen Itza is about 2.5 hours north of Playa del Carmen. So I'll be going there. I had huge travel plans for 2020. I'm going to try to do some of it in 2021. So I may be going to Thailand or Tanzania, something with a T this year. Depends on visas and travel and stuff like that. But I will be back in the US in the spring for a visit as well. And I was hoping that maybe by then that some of the restrictions would be lifted and people would be able to meet in person. I'm not really sure how that's going, but based on these numbers, I don't think that's going to be the case. So
yeah, it sounds like we're really going to need to depend on any vaccines that come out. So we shall see. But if we don't always see each other in person, hopefully we get to see each other again virtually.
Yeah, this is fun. Actually, I didn't realize that like so many meetups were happening this way, and that it's an option for me to participate and not feel so like distant. I miss coming to meetups. I miss being around. There are not a lot of development groups in these different locales, man. They're just like, there's not an opportunity to really talk to other developers and share ideas and experiences. It seems to be, my experience has pretty much been limited to the Slack groups and things of that nature. So I'm really happy that you're having this, and I really appreciate being invited to come and talk.
Yeah, for sure. We're glad to have you. And yeah, it's been great. I think the only downside to these meetings is that we don't have free food here like we do in person.
Yeah.
So everyone's stuck, cooking on their own. But yeah, it has been nice getting a lot of developers and speakers from different parts of the country, or international ones if we get them. Even when we hosted the iOS DevCamp TC, we had speakers from, or not speakers from every continent, but attendees from every continent. And we had speakers from, I think, 3 or 4 continents. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I think Paul Hudson, say it again.
How many people?
Scott, do you know the number? I want to say it was like around 300.
Wow.
Yeah, it was about 300 people. That sounds right.
That's massive.
Yeah,
that's great.
And it was cool. We had Paul Hudson, and I gave away a lot of free tickets.
Yeah.
And every ticket that was purchased, it went towards Women Who Code. And then the shirts that we got were bought by Capital One. So those were shipped out to everyone that attended.
That's really good, man. I definitely, this is an annual event.
Yeah, iOS DevCamp TC's annual event. Yep.
Yeah, I actually would like to attend. Let me know. Get me on you can add me to the mailing list so I can attend. Virtual conferences are going to pretty much be the way I have to do things moving forward for a while. So.
Yeah, that's why I was glad to get to see you again at 360 iDev.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I think we're both speakers this year, so it was awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun. I was glad that John was able to put it together. It's my favorite conference, man, and so I was just like an opportunity to participate in some kind of way. I mean, we couldn't hole up in the hotel like before,
yeah, right.
But it was still good. It's still good to see and talk to people and just reconnect.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I said, thank you again. I won't hold you up any longer, but definitely we'll stay in touch and follow along on your Instagram where with your travels.
Cool. Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah. The Coco Nomad on Instagram is probably the better one to do in terms of like if you want food photos, because that's pretty much what I do. I made a meat paella the other day, by the way.
A meat pie?
Bean paella. Paella is kind of
Oh,
like
paella.
it's like my
Gotcha.
go-to dish when I am invited to cook at someone's house.
Dang. All right, well, we gotta take a look at those, but don't just take pictures of food. We want to see everything.
Okay, will do.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you, and I guess stay tuned, and we'll announce what's happening next once we figure it out.